How many people here, at some point in your life, bought Kodak film? Yeah. The answer is every person over 30, right? I mean, that's exactly it. How many people here have used Instagram? The answer is every person under 30, right? That's really true. How many people are not totally sure what Instagram is? More hands on that one. Okay. Instagram is a photo sharing service. Okay. Now, how is it that Instagram, which has 12 employees, was recently sold to Facebook for $1 billion, and Kodak is in bankruptcy? Okay. They had a business model that worked for 100 years. It doesn't work anymore, and they didn't innovate it. And we've seen the results. Over and over, this is what we're seeing. Business models don't last as long as they used to. You know, look at newspapers for a dramatic example. That business model worked for over 100 years. Now they're dropping like flies. Magazines, my business, heaven knows. Retailing, huge business model innovation that has to be done, and only a few companies are managing it. The reason this is so difficult is that business models used to work for decades, many decades, and so you had many generations of management that never had to change the business model. Nobody knew how to do it. It wasn't in the culture. It wasn't what they did. So they don't have the muscles, they don't have the tools, and yet now they all have to do it. A consultant I talked to recently told me a good business model used to work for 30, 40 years at least. Now there are businesses where it has to change every 2 to 3 years, and if you can make it last 6 or 7 years, that's nirvana. That's the new world we're in, and it's a fundamentally new world. Who has done it well? There are a few examples that I love. One of the best, actually, which you may not know, is the Thomson Newspaper Company. Okay. Thomson was a great, great newspaper company. Lord Thomson, the CEO and proprietor, was one of the press lords in England, right? You don't get more glamorous than that, you know, being in the House of Lords because you own a bunch of newspapers. I mean, that is a fantastic thing, and they were a big factor in that business. They got out in 2000. Now, if you look back, you'll see that 2000 was the year of all-time highest ad revenues for the newspaper industry. All-time highest. And that's the year they decided to get out of the newspaper business. Now, as you can imagine, today, they look like geniuses for having exited the business and decided to focus completely on electronic information. Back then, they looked crazy. And this is actually one of the features of business model innovation when you do it well. You often are out of step, contrarian, seems crazy. Right? Another great example, of course, is Intel, which had to change its business model many times. It started out making memory chips till they figured out that that was going to be a commodity business. So they changed completely and started making entirely processing chips. And then they realized that those chips are an anonymous commodity inside somebody else's product, so they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on the Intel Inside campaign and made this anonymous commodity into a branded consumer product, which had never been done before. And now as the devices that people use are shifting from, you know, PCs and so forth to mobile devices, they're changing again. Each one of those decisions is a bet the company decision. It's a complete change in the business model. And so far, they have made those changes successfully every time. But every time it seemed risky and contrarian. That's what changing the business model is about. And we're still seeing other companies do it, and we don't know how it'll work out, but they have to do it. Any company that wants to grow and succeed in this environment has got to get comfortable with the idea of changing the business model and then being prepared to change it again.